and they have silly questions. There's no stupid questions. But tell that to a 20-year-old that's sitting in a room with maybe mom and dad and their advisor, and they have a silly, quote unquote, stupid question about what does this mean. I think providing that space in these conferences is integral. Welcome back to the Family Wealth Edge. Kristen, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
Amazing. I think your weather is probably nicer than mine and down in Florida and me up here in Hamilton, Ontario.
Yes,
So
we're.
for today's talk, as we talked about prepping for this, our Family Wealth Edge channel, we want to have a conversation about a recent conference you went to called Transitions. I've heard you talk about this a few times. I know you were excited to go. Tell me a little bit more about the Transitions Conference, your experience there, maybe some takeaways that you gained from the conference.
Yeah, it was great. I love the Transitions Conference. It was my first time going to it. Celine Fitzgerald from my team came,
Amazing.
Celine. It was really good to be
Yeah.
together. We don't get to be together really very much.
Yeah.
It was good to be in person with her. And honestly, it was the first conference that I've been to in a really long time that is focused on like having my family member hat on. There's other conferences that I go to, like as
Mm,
a coach for families, but this one was focused on bringing family members together. It's Family Business Magazine, so they pull family
yeah.
members together to kind of talk about the real behind the curtain aspects of what it is to manage family wealth. There's a lot of people with active family business that go to it, and these people are so generous in their sharing. So there'll be like a panel discussion of family members talking about how, for example, there was one panel on how they manage married-ins coming into the family and like what roles
Mm,
are available to them and how they
scary.
prepare them to come into the mix. And it was so refreshing because there was a really positive, and it was kind of a theme, a really positive attitude towards bringing married-ins into the family and kind of some how-tos for how to do that. And
Mm,
I found that refreshing. I think a lot of times what we hear is like that they represent risk, like that managing the risk of
yeah.
people marrying into the family. So I found the positivity of their approach really refreshing.
Mm. What was the demographics like in the room? I know we've done some conferences together, and it's you get sometimes I think something like the marketplace is that the people in the room are often a little older.
Yeah,
What was that like? And that could be a little daunting for rising gens to
yeah.
step into a conference in a place of learning and in a safe and motivating environment.
I feel like it was great. There were a lot of young people there. I remember in the one breakout session, there was a guy who was in his 20s talking about how, I think it was like G4, talking about how they do family governance and how they're educating the next gen. So, I mean, I thought that part was pretty cool too. There was a mix of, families that were up to like G5, G6, and families that were transitioning to second generation, and a mix of all kinds of ages, a mix of genders. So I found that really cool too.
Mm. There was a picture I saw floating online of you looking really serious during one of the
Stop it.
breakouts. What were you learning? What were you? What
No.
were you? What were you writing down?
It's bad when you get like captured on camera and you don't realize it, and then it's posted on social media, right? No, I thought it was really great. It was a session on the topic of entrepreneurship and how to kind of like spark and inspire entrepreneurship in your family. What is entrepreneurship? What's not? And a lot of myths busted on the topic of
Mm.
entrepreneurship. So that session I think was one of my favorites, clearly, because I was taking notes in the photo.
You look very serious. Couple of your key takeaways or themes. I know one of the things that we're always talking with when we work with families and even for our own families is the theme of the month or the theme of the year. Were there a couple of really key themes that you took away yourself from the Transitions Conference?
Yeah, and I found them really encouraging because there were a lot of people that were talking about education and the importance of education. Specifically, there was one session, um, our shared friend Tori Holly from Cameron
Shout
Learning
out
was
to
on
Tori.
the panel.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
but not just inside of that session, but in other sessions as well. There's definitely a theme around education, and it seemed really to reinforce that the families who are doing this well are thinking out 10 years in advance, not
Mm,
just to, okay, what are the roles that I play right now, but what are the roles that the next generation is going to play? Because sometimes that's unique. And developing education that is, dare I say, fun and engaging and relevant to them. and giving them opportunities to get involved in ways that are not pretend, that are real, so that they are equipping themselves along the way to become, contributors now, not necessarily in 30 years, by
Yeah.
getting them involved early and in ways that are fitting in with their life. And so being able to kind of have some fresh, innovative, positive ideas for that, to me, was amazing.
Yeah. Is there anything that you took away for your own family? I know your boys are getting a little older. It's a big year for the two of them with school and graduations and transitioning. Anything that you could implement or work on with your family from the conference?
It's always a high bar for us because we do this for other families. And
Yes.
so for me, that's why the conference was nice, to be able to go there and, not be thinking, of course, I'm always thinking about my clients, but primarily be thinking about my own family and how I can be thinking about and what my family looks like in 10 years. And in 10 years time, hopefully my boys are stepping into leadership roles and I'm learning from them. And
Yeah.
we may have other new family members. I may have married-ins in the mix, and I hope to be as sort of open to having them involved in whatever aspects of leadership and wealth stewardship that we have going on in our family
Yeah.
as well. And that's
Yeah.
that's exciting, but it's time for us, for my husband and I, to start thinking about that and what our values are, how we want to show up to that now versus sort of being caught off guard by it, because obviously
Yeah.
I know that that's coming.
Would were there any younger? Like I know your boys are in their late teens. Was there those type of people at the conference? I'd be curious to see like maybe next year, the year
Yeah,
after, one of them joins you there in a
that would
shared
be cool.
learning
Hmm.
experience. Yeah, that would
Yeah.
be cool.
Yeah, and they have, I mean, my oldest is gonna be 22, Vincent, so it's pretty
Wow.
crazy to think about. But yeah, there were definitely people in their mid-20s there. I didn't see any people younger than that. And I
Yeah.
think that the 20-somethings that were showing up are, family champion types and kind of the leaders in their own generations and wanting to take back the information that they're learning. So that's just so encouraging to see.
I think it's what's also fascinating too, your work the last 10 plus years is you really curating this peer learning environment. It, any feedback or thoughts on purposely separating family members and advisors? I know conferences have tried this for years, and sometimes there's this weird, I'm an advisor and then there's a family member. Any thoughts on that? I know it can be tough for people to separate those conversations when there are advisors in the room. Did you like the format? Do you think it works better maybe? I'm just kind of curious to see what your experience is like.
Yeah, I appreciate the efforts that Family Business Magazine takes to create sort of a corner of the industry where family members can come together and feel like,
Hmm.
it is kind of insulated from being sold to. And for Celine and I, we always take great care and try to be very sensitive about the fact that, if someone's asking kind of like, what do you do in that space, that we try to be very
Yeah.
careful to say like, well, I'm
Yeah.
here with my family member hat on.
Yeah.
And I do a bit of education for rising generation family members as well, just to honor that, because there are very few spaces that exist for family
Yeah.
members to just be able to be honest about the challenges that they're facing and the hurdles that they have without having an advisor come straight to them and say like, I have a
Yeah.
solution for that, which is not
Yeah.
necessarily helpful in that context.
Yeah, and that you're right, and that's tough. I think especially with these our these our us and our clients, these family business owners, are always being the word is they're always being sold something, a solution, a product. So to give that space and just allow people to be people and figure out,
Mhm.
like, we all have questions and we're all human. And I think what's fascinating, and I'd love to attend hopefully next year with these conferences, but it's so fascinating to see people trying to figure out and manage the structures that they're in today that they most likely didn't create for themselves. So
Mm.
it's this trying to work through a situation where, especially for our young friends and rising gens in this world, structures that mom and dad built in some cases decades ago, and they're inheriting it, and they have silly questions. There's no stupid questions, but tell that to a 20-year-old that's sitting in a room with maybe mom and dad and their advisor, and they have a silly, quote unquote, stupid question about what does this mean. I think providing that space in these conferences is integral. I know that's one of our motivators in really trying to have people be themselves and talk about what's really going on so that planning can happen at their pace and for their individual lives. That's amazing that you had that experience.
And it's cool to see family members get on the learning side of the table together across
Yeah.
generations. Um, to all be showing up with a beginner's mind, and maybe it's easier for the rising generation to come alongside some information and innovation to bring to their family business, family enterprise, when it's been shared from the stage versus just,
Mm.
hey, mom and dad, I have an idea. So I
Yeah.
think the opportunity to get on the same side of the table together as a family and learn, and then go back to your family and sort out what fits best for you. What aspects of what we learned do we need
Mm.
to start applying now? Do we need to put on the shelf for 10 years from now? I just think it's super helpful.
Great. Closing comments as we wrap up this Family Wealth Edge episode. And your closing comments on the conference, maybe some hopes for other family members to attend, or some takeaways that you experienced personally from the conference last week.
Well, what do I have to do to get you to attend with me next time?
I mean, if it's in April in Florida, I'll be there probably with bells on.